Right, so Q Developer. How many of you are aware of what Q Developer is? Oh, that's good. That's a good show of hands. This is going to be a very sort of basic introduction to Q Developer for those that have not seen it, and we'll go through a few of the features that are in it. Now, if you've been listening to anything that AWS says in the past while, you'll have got used to us saying generative AI again and again and again and again and possibly again. And I'm not one to just talk about generative AI. I much prefer when something actually tangible comes out of it that can be useful in day to day. So this is my second generative AI talk that I've done, because previously it's all been about, this is what Gen AI is. And it's like, okay, but why does anybody care? What's it going to do for them? That's the bits that I'm interested in. So Q Developer, as the name suggests, aimed at developers, but also aimed at those people like architects and DevOps and people that are dealing with code and setting up resources and things like that. I'll just crack on. I'm going to try a live demo later. That may go horribly wrong. We'll see. The Wi-Fi here is quite slow, but we'll give it a go. Okay, so I'm going to very briefly talk about Gen AI with AWS, then introduction to Q Developer, some of the key features, some of the new things like operating on AWS and getting started. And then I'll launch into hopefully a very brief demo, but also showing you what you can do with it that's pretty cool. Right, so you may have already seen these slides if you've seen any of the AWS talks about Gen AI. This is just showing the stack that we've got all the way from the bottom, where we've got chips that help you build models. We've got SageMaker that helps you build and train AI models. Moving on up, we've got Bedrock, which gives you access to Amazon and partner models through a consistent API. And that works on a serverless basis, so you can consume AI models and ask questions and things like that. And then above that, we've got applications that help you do things. So Q Business is aimed at providing a front end, a way of building applications really easily for business tasks, really. It doesn't have to be business, but useful things. For example, very, very easy to create an application where you just throw a whole bunch of docs at it and then ask it to search those docs, give you a summary of those docs, and it will then give you, pointers to where in the docs it found that stuff. So you can double check it, because Gen AI can hallucinate and make things up, which is not what we really want if we're going to make decisions based on what it says. And then we have Q Developer, which is aimed at improving things throughout the software development lifecycle. So I did used to be a developer quite a while ago. I would say I had hair then, but I'd be lying. But yeah, it's been a while. However, I used to spend a tiny amount of my time doing fun coding. And most of the rest of the time was boilerplate garbage. And that really, at the time, it's like, well, I've got to do this. We're a team of 5 developers. But, really, what value am I bringing to the business by doing this again and again and again? And you work out ways to automate things. And then you run for a while until you discover something else that should be automated. And it takes a while to then build these things up. And then you move into a different team and you go, right, well, my automation I wasn't thinking about going across multiple teams. I was thinking about sorting that team. So I've now got to redo my automation and try and apply it to this new team. And yeah, so Q Developer helps with a lot of that stuff that's not giving great value to the business. Or to yourself if it's a personal project. So this is a survey done by software.com of I think it was 200,000 developers, 250,000 developers, something like that, and came out with the horrifying quote of 1 hour coding time a day from a developer. Now that's a pretty startling figure if you are a developer. And I did go and look at this, and I thought this wasn't sponsored by somebody who's making a code assistant, was it? It wasn't. We didn't sponsor this. Microsoft didn't sponsor this. This is a report from a company that looks at developers and what they do. And that is a pretty horrifying number, especially if you're a developer and you enjoy coding. You become a developer usually to code and do interesting things, and then you find that what you're doing is you're going to meetings, you're doing boilerplate stuff, you're patching, you're upgrading things, you're getting security alerts around about versions of things that you depend on. So you've then got to patch that. Does my code still work? I need to retest it all. All of these things mean that you're not actually doing the thing that you really enjoy, which is usually writing code. So Q Developer has been made to help developers do what they do. So yeah, it's there to help you automate a lot of the things that you've probably already automated, or you have this big, certainly I had this big library of snippets of really useful things that I would then just chuck into my code. Great, I've already done that. And I'd constantly be adding to it. And then you've also got all the resources out on the internet that you also go to and nick code from and hope that it's going to work in your environment. So Q Developer, it will do the usual AI coding assistant stuff. So you're typing away and it will pop up and say, oh, looks like you're making this sort of thing. Is this the function you wanted? Well, it might be, in which case, great, I'll have that. It might not be, in which case it quite often will have a whole bunch of different ones that you can cycle through and find something that looks like what you were building. You can comment a function and Q Developer will give you a good stab at the start of that function for you. It's not necessarily going to produce code that you would go, hey, that's production ready, great, next, done. My job is really easy now. But it does give you a good starter. Q Developer's got agents in it. You can talk to the agent. It's a chat thing, but there's no humans behind it. And you can chat to it and say, no, I didn't really mean that. I meant this. Or, yeah, that was great, but as we'll come on to later, I say, you've given me something in, I've got something in JavaScript. I can't program in JavaScript. I can read it, can't write it. So how about Python or something else? And it will just convert the code for you. And this then comes on to some of the bigger features of Q Developer that we'll touch on. For example, you have a big code base of Java 8. Oh, Java 8's gone out of support. I've now got to convert all of that to a modern Java, look at what's deprecated, update all the bits of code that don't work anymore, and that's going to take a long time. Amazon did this as a big upgrade using Q Developer, and a company like Amazon, millions, billions of lines of Java code in Java 8. They reckon it saved 4,500 developer years. Now, huge scale of code, obviously, but every company's going to have legacy code bases that need help. And then the other thing as a developer you move teams. Right, here's another 10 repos. You are now writing code in these repos. I don't know these repos. What do they do? How are they structured? Is the documentation there? Quite often, no. This developer has left. He was the only one that knew this code. Did he leave documentation? Did he? Heck. Right, now, I've got 5,000 files in this repo that I need to understand. Q Developer can help document that code repo. It'll describe what the repo does. It can generate diagrams for you of how the components fit together. Really helpful stuff that can take a developer 2 or 3 weeks to actually get to know a repo and how it works and how to deploy it and all of that. And it can just short circuit the boring stuff. And also it will tell you about security vulnerabilities as you're going. It lets you do a pre review. So it'll let you do a code review across the code that you're going to commit and tell you the sorts of things that your code reviewer is going to point out to you when you actually do the code or attempt to do your code commit. And then hopefully I'll be demoing that later as well. So where are developers spending their time? Not doing an awful lot of coding, unfortunately. You're planning, you're creating, you're testing, you're securing it, you're reviewing it and reviewing it and reviewing it, deploying it, maintain, patching, and modernizing as you go. And then you repeat. Okay, so I've talked through all of that. So let us move on to where can you use Q Developer? Well, you can use Q Developer in the AWS console. You may have noticed the icon appearing initially. It kept popping up and was really annoying and said, "Hi, I'm Q." It's like, please go away. Yes. It looks like you're creating an application. No, that's a different agent entirely. So yeah, it's in the console. You can ask it how to do things. If you get an error when you're creating something in the console, usually there is a little Q thing that says, "Help me fix it." And Q will have a go at looking at what you've done, looking at your resources, and giving you an idea of what maybe is wrong. Doesn't always get it right, but it gives you a good starting point. Q Developer can fit inside your IDE, as we'll see later. So it's an extension that sits in VS Code and other IDEs. It's in the documentation, so it can pop up and give you a summary of documentation if you ask it to. You can, again, chat to it and ask it different questions instead of having to read through hundreds of pages of documentation or using our search, trying to find bits, which gives you lots of different false positives. You can just query Q and hopefully get to the answer. It's in the console mobile application. Has anybody ever used the console mobile application?
What is a console mobile application?
Excellent. Good question. I'll not spend a long time on that. Yeah, I remember this from years ago and didn't realize we still had it. It can also be put into Slack and Teams and be available to chat to through that. And GitLab Duo also has integration with Amazon Q.
Is there any reason why you have GitLab only and not GitHub?
I don't know.
Is it, maybe it's just because of the fact that GitHub has Copilot or something like that. I didn't know if there was like a strategic reason why that was the case.
No, I don't know.
AWS got replace code repo with GitLab internally. I could be making that up, that's why.
We use GitLab internally. It's not our primary set of repos.
This time is recorded, so you can't say anything bad.
No, but it's like we use GitLab, we use GitHub. As you'll see, all of our public samples and everything are on GitHub. And we also have another internal self-built set, code repo location service thing. Can't tell you too much about that, but yes, we do have another one. Okay, key features, a lot of which I've talked about. So if we're looking at build, now apologies for these are videos. So you've got here in the console, you bring it up, you've got chat, how do I build something? And it will give you an idea and point you to some documentation. It can even be, I don't know which service I'm supposed to be using. There's hundreds of services. What service does this? Because some of the service names are not exactly helpful for you working out where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. So yeah, as simple as this, how do I build a web application? So it gives you the options, and there are many options. And Q is available, all over the console. Inside services, it's context aware as well, and it maintains it keeps the conversation going, so you can ask it to refine its answer that it's given you as you're going. And it's got best practices built in, as well as advice around about how best to do architecture and security. Hello.
Yeah, do I have to log into the AWS console to have access to Q, or can I have it in an ID?
So Q in the console, you would have to log on to the console to be able to use it. Yes. Q as the command line queue or Q inside an IDE can be used with a builder ID, so it can be free.
But you do have to log in, you can't.
You have to log into something. Yeah.
Just a builder ID, you have to log in.
You have to log into something, but it can be a free account. It doesn't have to be, it can be a free builder account as opposed to a full AWS, give us your credit card, all that sort of setup. So it does have to log into something, because when you are chatting to Q, it's sending things off to somewhere to get an answer back, and that is an authenticated conversation. But yes, so Q developer, I was going to say this later, but I'll say it now. Q developer has a free version, which will give you a certain number of chats a month, will give you a certain number of reviews a month, will generate a certain amount of code, and has a professional level with unlimited access to it. So yeah, you can start off, give it a try, see what you think of it without spending any money, or use it on personal projects as well, without spending any money, and get used to it and use it and hopefully get some value from it. Okay, what time are we on? So explore and plan, we've already seen the how do I build a web app, so we then go on to create. Now in this, hopefully you can see it, the developer is creating a very simple little function there, which is taking a variable, squaring it, and returning the answer. So at the top there, they wrote a function, they wrote a comment that says function to square a number, and the rest of it was generated by Q. Okay, and it's documented as it's been going as well. You can also ask Q to explain the code that it's generated. So it may have given you a function, and you're like, well, explain that. Why have you done it like that? Can you update that to do it differently? So yeah, as we'll see later on, you could say, I want you to take, well, first off, create a lander, which is going to take a message from SQS. So it'll build that. It's like, okay, that was nice. Let's write that to DynamoDB, and then it'll update the function, give you more code that will write it to DynamoDB, and then you can, do other things with it and build your code up, and get it to change things as well. So it might be that it starts off all in a single function, and it's like, well, that's not a good way of doing things. I don't want to take a message from SQS and write it to DynamoDB in one unit. I want to break those up into different functions. Yeah, okay. So here we go, that was the video again. And as I'll show you in a little bit, so we've got the agent built into the IDE here. So we can chat to the agent, asking it to do things. And it could be that we just want it to, as we've got here, you see on the bottom left, we've said /dev, so we're asking it to do some development. And we're saying, refactor the code in this file. And it will go and look at your file, and it will look at what it thinks is good, leave that, and then things that are not good, it will then update them and give you at least a start in refactoring your code. Okay? And all of this, when it does something, it gives you the why. So it will give you a response that says, I'm doing this because this is best practice. Here's a link to some documentation that explains why it's best practice. And often we'll also say other ways that you could improve this code include doing this, this, and this. So it's not done it, but it's suggesting improvements to you. So you can have a look at it and say, well, yeah, that's a good point. I haven't included logging in what I've done there. Well, maybe I should add that in as well. Okay, and here we have difficult to see, but Q has flagged something as not being secure. And so it's giving you can I replay that video? So something was highlighted. Let's just see if I can pause it. Something was highlighted as not being good. Someone's hard-coded a database password in Java code. Now, you would hope nobody's doing that these days. You'd be amazed how often that gets done. And it's highlighted it and said, just don't do this. And as you can see, there is apply fix. So you can, if I can make my mouse move, you can view details on why this is a bad idea, and it will give you a good description of why you don't want to do that. But also, you can get it to generate and then apply a fix, and it will just sort out the code. And you can apply it, and that will go away. Obviously, as a developer, look that you're happy with what it's suggesting and that it's not doing something that's bad as well. But yeah, it can at least start giving you a remediation to security issues, to coding issues, to bad practice when you're dealing with AWS services as well. And you can use it to generate unit tests, which is something as developers we all really love. Yeah, it can actually generate them and start you off on some good tests. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, you can get it to do a pull request review. So here, we'll ask it to do a review by typing /review. And then we get to say whether we want it to just look at a file or look at the entire project. And it will then, if you've said entire project like you do here, it will do the code review, it'll go through all of your files, and it will then give you a summary of critical problems, high problems, medium, low, and it will tell you what they are. So we've got a few CWEs in here. And you can then go to these, you can select them, you can get it to explain what it's found, and it can generate a fix for you. So here we've got a package vulnerability. There's an explanation of what the problem is, and a suggested code fix, which is just upping a version. Nice, apply fix, done, test, test, test. Hopefully automated testing, and then it's done. Okay, not going to let this one go for too long. Okay. We also have a command line agent, which lets you, at the command line, chat to Amazon Q as well. And I will talk through that in the live demo. And it will let you write code, run tests, and it will also help you operate AWS. So you can get it to, if you have the AWS command line installed, authenticate to your AWS account, you can actually get Q to have a look at how things are operating. You can get it to query and say, you know, how many EC2 instances do I have running? Things like that, or even, do I have any suggestions for databases that need improved? So it can help you actually run. It can deploy code itself. I would suggest you do that in sandboxes, maybe not production. So you can see here it is generating cloud formations from a description that's been given to it. And again, it's telling you what it's doing all the way along and how to deploy it, and documents as it goes, which is really nice. So you see it's created a diagram for you. As I was saying earlier, this is a repo that you've come in, you don't understand. So you ask it, create some documentation, give me a diagram, help me understand this repo. And that's what it's doing. And it's also talking you through how to deploy it. And yeah, I wish this existed when I was a developer. Would have helped a huge amount. Okay, as I mentioned, helps you operate, can help diagnose, troubleshoot errors, And it's really good, not surprisingly, it's really good at AWS stuff. So it knows the APIs very well. It knows how the resources operate. It knows how they function together. So you can query it and get it to give you good advice on AWS architecture. Helps you manage, optimize cloud resources. So you could be saying, you know, do I have any underutilized EC2 instances? Can you suggest, you know, changing the instance type, for example, to make it better utilized than it currently is? And then, as I've mentioned, transforming workloads. This could be, you know, really, really good for you. So, for example, I've got this big VMware, thinking back quite a few years now, to when I had a big VMware estate that I needed to move to the cloud. And that was painstaking, unpicking all the different things, how they interlinked, and recreating them in AWS. With Q for Developer, using Transform, we can get it to look at all of the VMs and to suggest waves that we move the VMs together at because they're interlinked, to, you know, speed up that project. You can get it to look at COBOL applications on mainframes and upgrade them to Java. I mean, that is amazing. Java applications, upgrade them to the latest version, run testing, and yeah, get big improvements. And we've also got Q that are coming into other services. So Q in Redshift, where you can just type in a query in natural language and have it generate SQL from it. So you don't need to be a SQL expert to understand, to get data out of this. We've got Q in Redshift, Q in Glue, we've got Q in QuickSight. So Q in QuickSight can be, I need you to create me a dashboard that does, hello?
With regards to the Redshift side of things,
Yep.
does it understand the context of your Redshift database before it actually writes that query for you?
In what way? As in, does it understand the entire structure?
Yes.
So it does an efficient?
Does it actually have like an efficient query, or does it just give you like here's a potential way that you could write the query and you have to like drop in the column names yourself or the table names yourself?
So I don't know the intricacies of this one.
Unlikely.
Okay.
You'd have to put an authentication into your code.
Even if you're in the AWS console itself,
That's
that's
a
not
security breach, right? You can read the configuration, but not the actual code.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be interesting to dig into though.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, yeah, it's like if it doesn't understand the context, the query it's going to give you could be awful. Okay, so summary, before I do a quick live demo, helps you retire technical debt at scale. And the transform thing is really, really game changing. At least for me in my experience, you know, I've seen so many projects where that would have been really, really useful. It's not going to do it all for you, but it's going to do a big percentage of it that you can then take the output from that and go, right, okay, I'll tweak this, I'll tweak that, but otherwise, you know, instead of spending 6 months trying to unpick all these VMwares and work out, all these VMs and work out what talks to what, because that kind of changes over time. You get applications that are built that use a database that the database people don't even know that this user is making use of their database. So you spend an awful lot of time analyzing things, trying to work out how to do the migration, and this can take you a long way on that. Drive development productivity. Yep, get rid of a lot of the boring stuff that you have to do as a developer. And also give you coding recommendations as you're going. It's like you're already looking at Stack Overflow looking for ideas. So it's now inside your IDE giving you those ideas without you having to wade through pages and pages to find something that is useful. And improving your security and code quality, because it's scanning all the time. It's looking at what you're doing. It's giving you prompts to say, that was not a good thing you've just done. Here's how to fix it. In fact, do you want me to fix it? Okay, as I mentioned, you can try it for free. You can set it up, give it a go. If you don't like it, you've not spent anything. A little bit of time. Otherwise, plan your POC. See what good it could do you. That's the end of the talk. Let me just do, or at least attempt, a quick demo. Hopefully, this is actually going to work. So, I have here my Q extension in my IDE, VS Code. I have an incredibly complicated bit of JavaScript here. I said this was going to be very basic. So I've started a chat with the Q agent. So, highlight a bit of code, and I don't know what that does. Obviously I do, but explain the highlighted code. And then if the network's gods are with me, it's going to tell me what that code does. I think everybody here could have worked out what that code does, but you see, it's describing something. This can be helpful for. All right, that was interesting. Except, I really don't get this JavaScript stuff. So convert the active file to Python 3.12. Now, Q is going to look at this function and say, okay, I'll transfer that over to Python. You might not like the coding style it uses. You can if you're using Pro. Yeah, I don't know if you can do this in the free one, but you can add customization to Q Developer. So that if you've got a good repo with lots of good coding standards in it that you want people to be following, you can point Q Developer at it and say, make sure that the code you're generating looks like that. And then it will actually use your coding standards instead of generating, code in a sort of random fashion. Okay, so I now have a Python version of that function. Okay, nothing earth-shattering at this point. Let me stick that into a Lambda file. Hopefully I copied that. I did. Okay, so we're now in Python. That's a bit better for me. Probably not for those of you that are developers, but here we go. So, quite like this, but I would like this to write some into DynamoDB. So let's say update the function to write each message to a DynamoDB table. Those of you that have seen my talks before know I'm a bit obsessed with DynamoDB, called hello, using message ID as the PK. Okay, so I've not had to go back to the beginning, telling it where we are or anything. It keeps a context through the chat, so it understands where we are, and you can ask it to just update things as you're going. So here we go. Here is a function. Does it include DynamoDB stuff? It does. So we'll copy that. So as you can see, it's done the somewhat nasty thing of putting two different things in the same function. So we're doing SQS and we're handling DynamoDB in the same function. Now, let's do a review of that. So this is what you would do prior to doing a pull request and trying to commit your code so that your senior developer doesn't rip your stuff to shreds. So get it to review the active file. So we're looking for security issues, coding issues, inefficiencies, and that's what it's going to tell me. It's going to come out with a whole bunch of high, medium, lows, and even criticals if there are any in that function. And it's going to do it quite slowly. But you can see on the right hand here that it's starting to put some things up. So SQL injection, kinda. This is NoSQL, but yeah, NoSQL injection. So we could get it to fix that for us, but we're not fixing things at this point. We're just having a look at them. Performance inefficiencies. That doesn't sound good. Let's have a look at that, if we can fit it on the screen.
It wrote the code for you. Why
Yeah.
Why do you have to ask it to review if it wrote the code?
You always review.
It's the code that it gave you. So
Doesn't mean it's going to be good code though. So by reviewing it, it's having a look for security issues. You know, you've not asked it to do full logging, so you've just asked it to write some into DynamoDB. Well, it's not necessarily going to do brilliant error checking and all of that. You just said, I want something that's nice and easy.
But the review is also an agent, right? So although you're writing it in the same text box, when you do that /review, that's sending it off to a different model,
Yeah.
different context and everything else, and then it's going through a set function to test it. So
No, I get it, but like, why isn't it able to do both agents at the same time and then switch to the other?
Generate code that's already combined.
Yeah.
I guess you just need to have a custom instruction for that. Okay, it's like
Yep, you certainly could do. This is totally raw Q developer. It's not got customization in it. It's not looking at a good quality code repo that I'm going to be happy with.
It's not against Q. All the
No, all of that, they absolutely do. Yeah.
But then transformers, although it's been kind of kiboshed by Anthropic recently, traditionally it was just generating, we thought it was just generating the next token, so it's just kind of guesstimating what that next line of code will be. So they're feeding that back in with a different set of context, or having a more reasoning model or a steerable agent will kind of give you a better output. So I think over time, and I think if it can learn from your context as well as your company's context, it would actually be worthwhile.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, don't cough. There are also multiple models in Q Developer. So one model might do some of the generation, another model might be doing the reviews. And these models will get updated all the time. So always moving forward. So, yeah, why are we talking about this? So we have made the decision of putting the DynamoDB client inside the handler function. Now that might be okay. You might be okay with that code, you might not. So if you put it outside the handler function, then your Lambda execution environment can reuse connections to databases. So depending on how you want your function to be working and whether you're happy with reusing connections or not, you would put this code either outside the handler or not. So it's giving us that option. So I could accept the fix and it will move the code and fix that perceived performance issue. Okay, so that was that side. The only other thing I was going to do was have a look at what, oops, no, that's not going to fit. Is that going to fit? So I was, oops, that is not working. There we go. Okay, so what I've got in here, what time are we on? I've got 3 minutes, very quick. And this is something you can do with the command line. I have a README file in here, which is a description of something I'd like Q to do. So I want it to create a 3-tier web application. Non-functional requirement, I want it secured. I don't want it open out onto the internet. Output should contain hello Dundee. And I want to create the demo using CloudFormation, create it in my account, application, load balancer, Lambda, DynamoDB. Okay, so I can say to Q developer, on the command line, I can say, help me create the customer demo described in readme.md. So it will, at this point, read and understand readme.md and then follow the instructions. It's going to create a CloudFormation template for me containing an application load balancer, Lambda, DynamoDB. It's going to make a guess at what should be in the DynamoDB table because I haven't given it anywhere near enough information to actually do something solid here. But it will also work out what permissions you need between each of the different resources. So it's standing something up that as a POC, I can then add some decent code to. I can modify it, expand it, but it's just getting the basics done for me in a reasonably secure manner that I can then expand and make use of. This is going to take too long to run.
Is this going to use, so say if you've got Q with the builder's ID, does it use your environment variables with the profile to then deploy to AWS, or is that only available for the ones, the professional plans type of account?
So it will use environment variables and current CLI setup.
So you could steer it to say use profile X.
Yep.
Right, okay.
Yep, absolutely. And before it does anything, including writing to local files, anything like that, it will say, can I do this? Can I do this? Or you can say, yeah, just get on with it. I trust you. So yeah, I'm going to leave that running. That may or may not work. It should work.
I understand it understands AWS very well.
Yep.
So can I tell Q to write it in Terraform?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And if you, I mean, the way LLMs work, you don't always get the same answer. I've written it in there to use CloudFormation. When I was testing it earlier, I ran it once, it used CloudFormation. I ran it twice, the second time it did it in Terraform. So yeah, it absolutely will write it in Terraform for you. Okay, thanks very much. I'm 30 seconds over, which I think is a record for me.